Hi, I'm Elliot, a writer, and I'm typing out The Great Gatsby. Why? Because that was something Hunter S Thompson did because he wanted to see what it would be like to write a masterpiece. Now that I have some time on my hands, I figured it would be a good opportunity to try it myself. So, join me every Saturday until I finish the whole novel. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Typing Out The Great Gatsby. How are you guys? How are you coping with everything? Things are a little weird, right? It's as though we started this whole pandemic together and now we're all divided. It's not just divided in terms of where we live and how, critical the whole virus situation is, because some countries are handling it a little bit better than others, but also we're divided in terms of how we're moving forward. What do we think we should do next? Should we wear a mask or not? Should we hang out? Should we start booking vacation trips? It just felt like the unity we had 3 months ago is kind of gone. And as we wind down the summer, this has been a very strange summer. To even think of it ending is kind of sad, because this has been one of the strangest summers in all of existence. This has been the strangest year in all of my existence, all of my adult life, at least. I'm sure there were some wild years there in the 90s when I was a kid. Not sure. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that as summer ends and as the year ends, I think there's gonna be more craziness. It doesn't seem like we're gonna come together in time to save this year, to salvage it in any meaningful way. And it's a beautiful day here in Vancouver. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, except type The Great Gatsby. Actually, I got some stuff to do today. Got some errands to run. Running errands during the pandemic. It's always fun. Okay, let's just get right to it. Yeah. So the last time we left off, the story, Jordan Baker was telling Nick, I believe she's talking to Nick, about the whole Daisy business and Daisy's relationship with the Great Gatsby himself. And so now Nick is kind of involved in this whole situation because he's kind of the bridge between Daisy and Gatsby now, and you can sort of feel like drama is gonna ensue. It has taken a while to get to any sort of tangible plot conflict, but I think we're finally there, and it's exciting. So our intentions for today. I put some thought into it. I'm not sure if this is something that's gonna yield a lot of meaningful, insights from me, but this is what we're gonna look at today. We're gonna look at, I love this word, verisimilitude, how the writing kind of creates realism in it. What aspects does Fitzgerald put into the novel to give us a sense that this is happening in a real world? How is he creating this experience that could be like, if we walk outside, like, this is clearly reality, sort of, it's hard to tell. It's kind of like a simulation. But like, for example, when a book talks about, oh, the character's going to eat at McDonald's or buying something from 7-Eleven, that's, in a way, I'm not sure if I'm using this word right, that's verisimilitude, because it's incorporating things we know that is real into the story. So that is what we're going to look for today. We're going to look for little elements. I assume it's in here. I'm just making assumptions. I haven't read ahead or anything. That we're going to look for aspects to create this more immersive experience, creating this realism, because this is a story, sort of, that takes place in the real world. And yeah, we'll start with that. It's my cup. Has an E on it. All right, let's do this. Even this right here, what I'm typing right here, you could say that this is creating a sense of reality, because they're in New York, I believe, so Central Park, we all know where that is. So it's really putting us in a very specific spot in the world that, if you've ever been to Central Park, I haven't. I've been to New York, sort of. I have. But I haven't been to Central Park. But if you had, you can have a sense of where they are in the geography of the world. And I don't know how deep I should go with this, because in a way, all these words kind of bring up a sense of reality. Apartments. Okay, I've been dreading this part. I saw it ahead, but I'm gonna handle it like this. This seems to be, I don't know, a poem, a chant? Just a rhyme of some sort. Let me give this an extra space, just to make it. A nice creepy rhyme. Excellent. Sorry, mistake there. Friv. Starlight. He's regular tough. Yep. It feels like here, I find it's interesting because I feel like right now this conversation is trying to make sense of everything. I almost feel like Fitzgerald kind of wrote himself into a corner at some point. It's like, oh, we need to find a reason for Gatsby to actually not want to tell Nick about this and get Jordan to tell Nick. I know, let's just make it so he's, you know, he's very shy. He's kind of ashamed of himself. It's just make it work. This feels like a second draft type of scene, you know? And as you sort of read more, write more, and especially for myself, recognizing how I write a first draft, I can make the assumption that this was added in or modified in some way to connect the stories together, because it seems, I'm gonna just put it this way, seems kind of like forced into it from what we were reading from the rest of the chapter, you know? It's very strange. Or not strange, it feels a little bit out of place. I mean, it's working, it's necessary, but it's just something I'm noticing. Maybe it's just me. Let me know how you feel about this scene right now. There's a lot of explanation that's happening that I feel like maybe we could do without, but let's keep going. Like, I think what is bothering me is this Jordan Baker character seems kind of very convenient, you know? She's kind of like there to sort of tie things together. I don't particularly like it. think now that I think about it, writing a first-person narrative is kind of tricky, and you often need to sort of get information from scenes that the narrator is not present at. So when I think about it that way, I'm like, how can Nick learn about this without actually being present there? If this was written in a third person, I don't think the scene is necessary, because we could just kind of jump into that scene where right now the Gatsby was having that conversation with Jordan. We could actually see that scene unfolding instead of having Jordan relay the information to us afterwards. The story I'm currently working on is a first-person narrative, and I'm sort of thinking, so this whole idea now, it's like, okay, it's coming a little better, kind of a little, it makes a little more sense why this scene is necessary when I think about it that way. Because I'm like, oh, should I just make it so you switch character POVs? Which this book doesn't do at all. You could do that. It gets a little more complex, and it'll probably expand the book a little bit more. And I think when you want to create a more compact book, this is actually the right approach. Because imagine seeing the whole scene. You have to describe the room they're in. You could describe the room they're in. You could describe all the motion, the actual dialogue that happens. But I think one of the reasons why The Great Gatsby is so revered is that it's actually such a dense story. I mean, it's a love triangle story. It's not that dense, but it's like The Room. Remember The Room, the movie? It's like two and a half hours long, but it doesn't need to be that long. I think this book does a really good job at being economical and also very well written, like very descriptive at the same time. And I think this might be one of the approaches where it kind of uses character explaining things to kind of move the story forward and talk about scenes that the narrator, Nick, is not actually present at. So yeah, I think that's how you have to do it. I mean, I personally am not enjoying this as much I'm not enjoying this as much as I think I would if I was reading the scene between Gatsby and Jordan. It'd be nice to lose this Nick guy for a bit. That's kind of how I feel about stories sometimes, when I'm stuck with this POV character, and it's just like, I could use a little break from him. It's like Game of Thrones, like Song of Ice and Fire, when you're reading the different characters and you're just like reading this one character for too long. It's just like, oh my god, when will this character die? Not that I want Nick to die, of course. He's been a good guy so far. Chicago paper. I guess that's like an element that adds a little bit more reality into it. Puts a place. I feel like when you could like really put a place to it, it adds that reality. Like when you give things street names, instead of just that person walked down the street, it's like that person walked down 48th Ave. I don't know. Try to squeeze little things like that. It builds up. Like I said, it makes it more immersive, right? I feel like that line's supposed to be kind of deep. They're only the pursued, the pursuing, the busy, and the tired. Whew, another page. We're getting there. We're getting there. Almost the end of the chapter. How exciting. All right, there's a plan. I like it. I don't know how to make the, there's a C and then there's like a squiggly thing underneath it. I don't know what it's called, and I don't know how to make it like a shortcut hotkey way of creating it, so I'm not gonna. But know that facade C has a thing. If someone knows what it's called, please. I mean, I could Google it later, but yeah, if you want to be helpful. Yeah, 59th Street, a block of delicate pale light beamed down into the park. I think one of the important things to mention is, sorry, I think I spelled this right. That looks like an M, but it's an R and an N. Is that when you're adding these little realism elements to it, to not overdo it, do it sparingly, do it when you need to, because you don't want it to sound, I guess if you overdo it, it could, what would it be like? I want to say like it would be like a textbook, but that's not true. It wouldn't be like a textbook. It would be more like just unnecessary detail. It doesn't move the story forward. It doesn't add anything. I mean, it adds to it. It adds like unnecessary detail. You don't want to, it shouldn't be like a blueprint to a city, or like, you don't want it to be like a product placement heavy like piece of work, right? Which is actually kind of funny. Imagine if you had a novel that was completely sponsored by different, I guess it would be a magazine. I guess that's a magazine is what I'm describing. Imagine like a novel just like sponsored by like Pepsi and Home Depot and Amazon. What other brands are there? By Dunkin' Donuts. I'm trying to think of KFC. I'm actually curious to write something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun, actually. Forget everything I said. That's a brilliant idea, and that is something I'm gonna pursue next. I'm gonna try to get some of that sweet sponsorship money. It sounds so easy, right? I'm all for selling out. If you are trying to make money as a writer, good on you. I support that. Do it however you need to. I work as a marketer, so there's no shame here. There's no pretentiousness in this human vessel. I support everything you're doing, as long as it makes you happy, as long as you're living the life you want. And just Nick is doing the same thing. He's just wants a woman. Just wants a woman. Her wan, scornful mouth smiled, and so I drew her up again, closer, this time to my face. I think that means he kissed her. Nick, you sly devil, you. All right, chapter 5. We did it. We're doing it. For the doubters out there, naysayers, try to bring me down. Actually, there hasn't been any of that. to my surprise. It's actually very surprising. Everybody has been very supportive about this in their way. At least they're not talking about it to my face, which I appreciate. Please do not insult me to my face. Stab me in the back all you want, but not my face. That's my moneymaker. This time to my face. Okay, I think this is a good place to do a Fitzgerald Fun Fact. Every week I try to find a fun fact, whether about F. Scott Fitzgerald or about the novel The Great Gatsby. This week it's something a little different. This is not so much of a fact as a finding. This is a finding. It's a discovery. So apparently, I haven't read this book, but it's new. The book is called Nick, and it's written by an author called Michael Ferris Smith. And how do I describe this? I suppose it is fan fiction, because it's what do you call when like a prequel? Is that what you call something that's before something? It's a prequel to The Great Gatsby. This book is called Nick, and it follows Nick Carraway's life all the way up until he moves to West Egg. So it follows his life from World War I to when he's living in Paris to when he's living in New Orleans. It's I've been so kind of immersed in this for the past 3-4 months almost, that it's such a strange thing when someone takes your work and then adds to it, you know? I can only assume this Michael Ferris Smith person knows a lot about The Great Gatsby, and he can sort of but is it still called fan fiction if you like publish it in a major publication, which I think he's like, I did a bit of research on him and he seems like a legitimate writer. Please look it up. The book's called Nick. The author is called Michael Ferris Smith. If you have read any of his other works, please let me know how it is, if it's good or not. I'm very interested. I mean, I'm pretty busy with this whole project right now, and I don't think reading that is necessarily going to help with what I'm doing here, but it was a really interesting thing to see because I've written fan fiction before. Guilty. It's something I've done before. And obviously I kind of take creative liberties when doing it. You make up things as you go. You try to be as loyal to the storyline as possible, but you kind of add to it. You can make your own twists. It's like writing a spec script for a sitcom or a television show, which is the way script writers get hired. It's like you pick a television show that's already on and you write a whole episode about it. It's almost kind of like that. I mean, it seems like a great idea to sell books, to be honest. And I don't know if I'm ever gonna know a book well enough to do a prequel on it. I wonder what book. That's something to think about. If you were gonna do a prequel, or what is the opposite of a sequel? A sequel for a story that exists that's like kind of a one-off. What would it be? I'm just trying to think. What would I do? I don't know. Nothing off the top of my head at the moment. My favorite story is the main character kind of dies, is born. It's very dense. I think that takes a little bit of thinking. Also, let me know if you consider it fan fiction. I feel like I do. I feel like if the source material isn't written by you and you kind of add to it, I think that counts. I think that falls under that genre as a fan. It could still be good. Some fan fictions are really good. So I've heard. All right, chapter 5. Ooh, that's a great sentence to start a chapter. Oh no. I'm worried about this. I always called it hide and seek. I think it is legitimately called hide and go seek. I don't know what sardines in the box is. Weird. Don't fully get that. Whatever. Oh, okay. It's not an actual fire. Just a lot of lights. It's see, that's like a big metaphor, right? I think that's something you could do when you're writing from a first person narrative, that it's kind of tricky to do if you're writing from like a third person omniscient kind of perspective, where everything you say can be taken literally, but when it's through a narrator you can be like, oh, okay, he's just saying what he thought, and he's being, I guess he's making metaphors and just yeah, he's just, it was a bit of like, he hooks you and then he like throws you around and you're like, wait, what? That's how I feel with the beginning 2 paragraphs of this chapter. I felt tossed around a bit, but I feel like I've got my grounds. And that's the thing about like when you talk about like challenging your readers, just pretending like you're not pretending, but like respecting your readers and appreciating them, and acknowledging that they are intelligent people and that you could play these tricks on them, and that eventually you'll bring them out of it and they'll get what's actually happening. And so you take them on a little ride. When a good writer does that, it's actually kind of enjoyable as a reader because you feel like you were there to solve the puzzle. You know, it's not just like explained to you. So I suppose this is a good thing. Even though I felt tossed around for a bit. Just tossed around. I don't know if that's the best analogy for what actually happened, but that's kind of how I felt. I thought his house was on fire. That's all. I feel like we've all had this type of conversation before where we're just trying to, no, I don't want to do anything right now. I just want to go to sleep. And then you end up staying up all night, hanging out by yourself, watching YouTube videos, watching someone type out The Great Gatsby on YouTube, canceling all your plans just to watch someone type out Great Gatsby. Sounds like a great night. Screw Coney Island and swimming in a pool. You were doing the right thing. Boy, where am I? Sorry, I got so distracted with my own thoughts. God damn it, Gatsby, you're already putting Nick through so much trouble. Well, people already put you through so much, and then you're like, okay, the plan is in motion, this is what we're gonna do. And then like, no, don't do that for me. It's like, god damn it, I'm already doing it. It's already happening, Gatsby, you son of a bee. Son of a Gatsby. And it's nice to have a bit of this pushback for characters, and they're not completely agreeable, and they're kind of annoying this way. Gatsby's being kind of annoying. What I've discovered with a lot of people, people are generally, sorry, I'm so bad at speaking today. People generally want to help you. What they don't want to do is figure everything out on their own. So when you ask someone to help you, they're usually very into it, but you kind of need to like help them help you, you know? Help them figure out a plan, help them figure out the steps in which to do something is all management advice. And if your character is not a manager in a sense, they won't recognize this, which is fine. But this is more of life lessons here. If you want someone to help you, give them a clear time for when something should happen, and then we could talk. It's like, if the time doesn't work, we could adjust it as you go, but it just helps the conversation move so much faster if you could just give them a time, give them a place to meet if you're meeting them, and give them like clear steps in what to do. Just helps focus them, because people are generally pretty not great in figuring that stuff on their own, especially if they're in the mode of like, okay, all right, let's invite Daisy over for tea. Like, it's like, okay, I'm already doing this for you. Please figure out everything else for me. And Gatsby's not being super supportive right now, even though Nick has already committed to helping him. He's like, you could back up now, but he really can't. He really can't. People need to be frank with each other, you know? You just gotta, if someone gives you something, just like accept it. Don't push back against it. Sorry, something really epic is happening outside. Oh, it took my comma away. Nope, no, it just fixed everything for me. tricky thing to do, looking at this section here, that I often feel as a writer is when a character changes topics right in the middle of a conversation. I'm like, it's just kind of follow along. You don't want to veer too far away from the storyline, but the character also has a different thought. I think this, if your character ever is sort of in a conversation and then another thing pops into their head, I think this is a nice thing to look at, just see how it's approached. Because one moment, they're talking about having Daisy over for tea, talking about the time, the schedule. Then Gatsby kind of just, a thought pops into this. Maybe I want to cut the grass. Let's cut the grass first. And then he's looking at the grass, and it's like, oh, and there's another thing. So he's just like forces Nick to kind of double clutch on a thought. It's like, I thought we're talking about this. And then he's like, no, we're not talking about that anymore. It's like, wait, do you want to reschedule like completely? Do you want to put off this tea for a bit? And he's like, no, don't even worry about that. How's your money? And this is kind of like, how do I put this? It's almost like Gatsby's taking the upper hand. He's wanting to make the choices. He wants to control the conversation. He feels like he's weakened by Nick, like making decisions, even though he doesn't really want to. He feels really awkward. He feels vulnerable here, and so he's like, I know what I have that Nick doesn't have. I have money, so I need to take the upper hand again. So at the beginning of the scene, you can feel that Nick is kind of directing the conversation. He's like asking the questions. Like, I thought your house was on fire. No, he didn't say that. I thought your house was the World's Fair. And then he's like kind of mocking Gatsby a little. And it's like, oh gosh. And it's like, oh, and I want to do this favor for you. It's like, when are you available for it? And then Gatsby's like, okay, I don't know. All of a sudden, they're talking about money, and then Gatsby's in control now. So that's very interesting. It's like how it's like a friendly game of who has leverage over who. It's interesting to notice these things. Okay, so we're running out of time for today. So I'm gonna get on this here thing. So every episode we do, I explain it every episode. I feel like you guys should know it by now, unless you're starting watching, this is your first time watching this. Every episode, I time myself for a minute to see how many words I could type out in a minute. I think my record right now from the previous episode is 80, which is really good. 80 words in a minute. Like, if you asked me at the beginning of this whole thing, it's like, do you think you could type 80 words in a minute? I'll be like, no way, Jose. But I accomplished that. I amazed myself. So we're gonna keep trying to add to it. I'm gonna see if I could type 200 words a minute at one point, which is the average, like the minimal requirement if you want to be a stenographer. Apparently, I didn't do too much research on this. Okay, we're going for 200. I'm just kidding. We're going for 80. Anything over 80 would be nice. I don't know if I could do that, but let's give it a shot. right, the dialogue kind of messed me up, but I think it did good. Let me just check these. Yeah, I messed up there. So -1. This is supposed to be one of, I'm sure you guys saw that. 69. 69 minus 1. 68. Almost the ultimate number. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. I'm fine with that, actually. The next word here is wolf. Yeah, it's not too bad. Not too bad. I don't know if I should keep going. You know what? This was a good. This was good. We got the average amount done today. Let's cut it off there. Let's not burn ourselves out. I think that's the most important thing that we must learn. We gotta be consistent, but we cannot burn ourselves out. I feel like I'm almost halfway, to be honest. That's a good feeling. Almost there. Episode 16. We're almost there. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Typing Out the Great Gatsby. I think we surprisingly found a few things that were quite interesting, especially for working on a first-person narrative. I think there's a few things I might hang on to, ideas to hang on to from doing this episode here. I hope you got something out of it as well. I'm just gonna wrap it up. Just gonna wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me, for all the support that you give. Please leave a comment. Let me know what projects you're working on, what you are hoping to improve on. It always helps me kind of calibrate what I should talk about when I get some ideas from other people instead of just coming up with ideas on my own. I mean, pretty good. I could come up with ideas on my own. It's not too hard. It's all in my brain. Anyways, that's it. Enjoy your summery days. Hopefully it's really nice out. Try to get a 10. Get a 10. Get some of that vitamin D. It's good for you. Have a nice cold drink on a patio. Sounds pretty nice. Don't do anything dangerous. Support local business. And yeah, that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say for now. I'll talk to you guys next week.